When you go on vacation, how much soccer do you watch?
Well, first of all, it wasn't a vacation. I was getting married. Marriage is important, but not as important as the Audi 2019 MLS Cup playoffs. Yes, back on brand. They start this weekend, Saturday and Sunday.
That was a Princess Bride reference.
Oh, of course
That's
it
a
was.
Gen X movie, not a millennial movie.
But I jump back and forth between
I'm
the two.
so delighted.
I've never heard of
Fearless
that movie.
predictions begin at this side of the table.
We have to acknowledge that the first take, Wiebe didn't say he was on vacation.
No.
He was at work.
No. Okay, here's
It was
my...
a work trip to get
Ike
married.
Opara is going to shut down Zlatan. That is my not-so-fearless prediction because Ike Opara is Defender of the Year. What about you guys?
Wiebe's going to be in trouble when he gets home.
Oh. Fine. Extra time starts now. From New York, you are listening to Extra Time, driven by Continental from the AT&T MLS studios in Midtown Manhattan. I am Andrew Wiebe with my partners in soccer, Matt Doyle, David Goss, Bobby Warshaw, the original crew, the green room crew, the guys who just sat back in a closet and talked soccer for a couple years together. It feels good. It feels nice to return to this. With the ring on my finger, just get it out of the way. I'm a married man. Make your jokes.
You're
Bring
cry?
your burns. No, I got that out of the way. You were there.
You're gonna cry about being back on the show now?
Oh, I should. I would. Normally I might.
You're the Dick Vermeil of this show. Is that
probably.
his name?
I don't know.
He was an NFL coach
Yeah,
who
he was.
always cried in press
Very
conferences.
emotional,
Yeah.
Dick Vermeil.
Thank you.
For
Oh, yeah,
sure.
Chiefs.
Former
Yeah,
Chiefs
yeah,
coach. Yeah. Never quite got over the hump, did he? I hit the over at the wedding. You guys had the betting lines going mid-wedding,
I was under.
which was not smart.
Was not smart. Sometimes you got to believe. There's something I have to believe in the world, and it was Andrew's ability to hold it together.
Right. So this side of the table now has been a part of holy matrimony.
Mm-hmm.
This side, one of the two is engaged. Bobby's completely out in the world here right now. Just anti all of this bit. Do you want to talk soccer, Bobby? Is that what you'd like?
Oh, engaged to this conversation.
Oh, no. Yeah,
Because I was like, what is that?
whoa.
Yeah,
You're like,
it took me a minute. It was a good choice of words right there, baby.
I didn't even realize it. Maybe someday we'll celebrate that with you both. Look, Audi MLS Cup playoffs start on Saturday and Sunday with the first round, 6 games. Go back and listen to Monday's show for the Eastern Conference preview. We're going to tackle it. I know why you laughed there.
I sat in that chair, though, and I made a Wiebe mistake.
Which was?
Well, I don't want to highlight it at this point. I'll just say it was a Wiebe mistake.
Gotcha.
And was like, maybe it's the chair or the location. So there might be something to that. Although you've been doing it since we've been doing podcasts in 6 other locations. So, I don't know.
I think it's a universal thing for me. We're going to tackle the Western Conference today with, we hope, Benny Feilhaber, trying to get him on the line right now. BS the podcast host, Sporting KC midfielder, longtime MLSer, played overseas, did his thing for the U.S. national team. We'll certainly have some insight on a club that is the favorite, which is LAFC, but big news for them. Mark Anthony Kaye leaving that match against the U.S. with what looked like a pulled hamstring, which is no good. It's the second one of those. That really is a cruel break for all of us who love the Audi 2019 MLS Cup playoffs because Miles Robinson was the other. I assumed you guys really dug into that one on Monday, right? Mm-hmm. Miles Robinson second in the Defender
Thanks
of
for
the Year
listening.
voting. Yeah, hey, look, I was on a red eye with a 2-year-old, all right? Cut me some slack here. The kid won't sleep. We'll get to that in the mailbag, too. Let's just talk. You know what? I want to talk playoffs. That's the joy in my life right now, but I got to Marie Kondo this U.S. national team stuff and just
Nice.
get it out of the way. Just clear it right out of my mental space.
Comes in firing, Andrew Wiebe.
2-0 loss in Toronto to Canada. 34 years, which is, you probably heard that over and over and over. Canada hadn't won against the U.S. in that amount of time. Well, that's over.
Oh, Canada.
And we're going to do this the right way. We're going to talk about Canada first.
Oh, yeah.
Huge win. Massive win. They're trying to go to the Hex. I personally want them in the Hex. They were 5 points back of El Salvador in the FIFA rankings, trying to get into 6th place coming into this international break. They had but one game, just the U.S., because they'd already played Cuba twice. Mm-hmm. They had a little rest. They had time to prepare. They saw the U.S. beat Cuba 7-0, and then they kind of jumped on us.
Yeah.
And they earned all 3 points, and they could have had more, and they made history.
Not more than 3 points, but yeah.
Well, more goals. True. That's the maximum amount of points.
Fall down 5 times, get up 6 weeks.
And they
Keep
should
going.
be celebrating the way they're celebrating. And right now, soccer Twitter is basically American folks saying, oh, man, we should beat Canada. We should definitely beat Canada after we didn't beat Canada. And Canada folks saying, but you didn't beat us. You're not that good. Step back.
Boom.
Let's celebrate Canada.
Okay.
It's a cup final. They won it. Let's go. How many big games has Canada won in the last, let's just say 35 years?
They were up 2-0 on Haiti in the Gold Cup, and they lost that game, which was a big game and a game they wanted to win. John Herdman went all in on this one, too, emotionally, which was a risk because there was a chance that they were going to get a draw in this game and play well, and then he's put all his chips in, and he believed in his team.
Or a
in
loss.
this group. Or a loss, yeah. Well, I mean, as a coach, you're going to hope that never happens.
Sure.
And they performed missing big players in Daniel Henry, Mark Anthony Kaye going out with injury, and they still had enough pieces to bring guys off the bench or move guys into the starting lineup to get the job done. They emotionally played the game they wanted to play, which was, and they said it, they were going to play an athletic front line, and they were going to press us at times. They were going to play higher up the field than you would assume a Canada team would play us. They controlled the game. They controlled the atmosphere. And I think they won a lot of fans maybe back, or maybe they've never existed because it's been about 30 years since they were close to a World Cup. And I think for this program, this was a huge win, a moment that they needed to say, we're here, we're established, going into World Cup qualifying. What the U.S. did in '89 is what they're trying to do, to prove they belong in a World Cup before they have the opportunity to host and probably qualify. They've got a group that's capable of doing it. They need to prove that they could beat CONCACAF teams on the road and teams that are bigger than them, as John Herdman says, rivals that we've never beaten or we haven't in 30 years. And they did one of those two things, and they did it with style.
I love that they came out and threw punches because against Mexico in the Gold Cup, they kind of sat back. And I thought maybe despite the fact that Herdman was saying, we're going to go after this. The way to trouble the U.S. is to do X, Y, and Z. I thought that might be more like pregame bluster than actual game plan. And I turned out to be dead wrong. And if you're a Canada fan, you got to be super happy about that.
Yeah, because they didn't play scared. They didn't play intimidated at all. They didn't they knew what they were about, and they knew that if they really went out there and executed the game plan, they could impose themselves on the U.S. rather than vice versa. And that's what they did. And I think underpinning all of it, as David said, Canada is where the U.S. team was 30 years ago in terms of trying to qualify for the World Cup for the first time in decades, trying to do so before you actually host it, and doing so. Still, even though this is a very good team, I think this is a top 4 or 5 team in the Hexagonal in terms of raw talent, maybe even higher than that now. Still doing it at a talent disadvantage, and I think they use that. I mean, Liam Fraser's out there outplaying Michael Bradley, who is in front of him on the depth chart at Toronto FC. Sam Piet is out there kicking the hell out of Christian Roldan, who Roldan is a better player in MLS than Piet has been. There's no question about who the better player was on the field in this game. And it was about, as Gregg Berhalter said afterwards, it was about desire. It was about the ability to win those 50-50 balls. I think it was also about tactics. It was also about where Gregg Berhalter draws the line of confrontation, how he sets up his central midfield. But throw out, that stuff doesn't matter unless you are willing to win the knife fight. And Canada won the knife fight in Costa Rica 2009 style. They just smashed the U.S. every time there was a chance to do it. And if you do that, and you have guys like Alphonso Davies and Jonathan David, and I know Jonathan David wasn't great in this game, but if you have attackers like that and you have guys elsewhere willing to win the knife fight, you're going to win some games.
Junior Hoylett didn't start this game. Richie Larea looked again good at right back, got forward, held down Christian Pulisic, who basically is running into 5 red jerseys. What did you see, Bobby, from this game from Canada? What impressed you? Can you sum up sort of the approach other than street-level stabbings?
Yeah, no, John Herdman set it up exactly right. Defensively, he talked about before the game that you don't necessarily need to go out and outplay the U.S. You need to disrupt what they're going to do, and that will inherently mean you are the dominant team in the game, which they did. Pressing a little higher, but more importantly, just having an active press all over the field. You don't necessarily have to do a high press. You can be in a middle block and press out of that, similar to what Atleti do with Diego Simeone. That's what it felt like to me. It was a team that dominated the game by first and foremost throwing off what the opponent wanted to do. Then in possession, using the box midfield, 2 center backs, 2 wing backs high, 4 center midfielders, 2 strikers, was so smart against Gregg Berhalter. Because one thing we've seen over and over with the crew is the passive middle block. And if I'm playing against a team that has their 2 center backs isolated like that with Canada, I would go and press. But the fact that Gregg Berhalter doesn't do that, John Herdman knew it, means his center backs weren't going to be in trouble. They could establish the box. They could push the wing backs high. Herdman knew exactly what Gregg Berhalter was going to do, and he exploited every part of it.
Congratulations, Canada. Now you're trying to get into the Hex, because I agree with you. Talent-wise, they probably should be there, but they can't earn their way there on their own. They have to get a little bit of help. They need El Salvador to potentially drop. They need Curacao.
No, I think after this, if they beat the U.S. again next month, then Canada's gonna leap El Salvador, and they're gonna be top 6, and then they're into the hexagonal.
Wait,
if they stay there.
Didn't they already leapfrog them?
We don't know. The rankings don't come out till this weekend.
Right. So right now, with a win against the U.S., home win, they are still 5 points back of El Salvador. Curacao, by the way, this isn't just a 2-horse race. Curacao is just 2 points behind Canada, and they drew in Costa Rica, are top of Group C, could win Group C. And then for all these teams that are trying to push into that 6th spot, the Nations League semi and finals and perhaps the 3rd place game are huge as well, because those are more opportunities to play good teams in big environments, perhaps on the road, and that's how you pick up points in these FIFA rankings. Panama is about 11 points back, so they're around as well. Let's say they knock off Mexico. They could be in this conversation.
Almost did. Can we talk about that for a half second?
Yeah.
They were tied 1-1, and it got that vibe where it was like Mexico fans were a little frustrated, started to get close. Unfortunately, JJ Macias exists and will only get better. But shout out to Panama for putting up a little bit of a fight, because Mexico did them some favors in that game.
Absolutely.
Including scoring.
As I said, El Salvador also won twice, but they're in Nations League B, so the level of competition is a little bit different. But El Salvador in the past has had some really big opponents and friendlies, which helped them rise into this position that they're currently in. So, Canada, you got to be hopeful. This is reason to have hope. But November 15th is a massive opportunity against the U.S. in Orlando. If they draw, if they win that game, they will win the group. They will go on to the semis. They've already qualified for the 2021 Gold Cup with their current performance right now. For Canada, if this was a cup final, what is that game?
Wait, what?
if this was a cup final, like that game is, a World Cup final for them? I mean,
if they need to win, it's another cup final. It's as simple as that. I mean, if you have to win both of them,
they
then
just need to win the treble to get into the Hex.
Exactly.
But it literally, I mean, that's what it is, right? If you have to win both, and they're both must-win games, they're both cup finals. It's the same thing. We don't know exactly where they'll be going to that game, but if they have to win again, it's the same situation.
All right, that's our last game. Congratulations, Canada. 2 wins against Cuba, although that 1-goal win may look troublesome for them if the U.S. win in Orlando, because then it comes down to goal differential, and if the U.S. whoop Cuba, I won't take you through the Nations League scenarios here. Let's just talk about the U.S., and I'm going to put it this way. You got a Richter scale, you got a panic meter, you have whatever it is that you manage sort of your concern, your worry, your consternation, your frustration, your anger, whatever it is, depending on whatever's in your heart. Where's it at right now?
Can we do the specific game first?
Sure.
Are you going to come back to Canada, to this specific game?
Yeah, for sure. From the U.S. perspective.
Okay.
Unless you have more on Canada, which I'm more than willing to
let's
hear.
do panic meter first.
Okay. Where's it at? Where's it at for you, Bobby? Does this worry you? When you watch this games, what emotions did you have? What has lingered in your mind and in your gut since then?
Yeah, it was hard. It was really hard to watch. Where is the panic meter? I'll say this, right? I thought Gregg Berhalter was a fine to good hire. Is he the exact person I would have hired? No, right? I would have gone with somebody else.
We all would have hired Tata, right? I'm serious.
No, I would have. I mean, that's a whole nother conversation.
As my number one choice for this team right now.
Either way, but the point is that I thought Berhalter was a good choice, right? He was within the spectrum of a good choice. I'm not going to back away from that now, especially understanding the way that he would want to play and the process that would take place. There's a conversation on whether he needs to adjust. For me, that tipping point didn't come until this game. He had an idea of how he wanted to play. We talk all the time that it's better to have an identity in a system than to not have those things. He did everything he could to drive it home, and it's not until this loss when you say, okay, I think we have enough evidence to say that adjustments need to be made moving forward. Now, I want to get into what those adjustments are because I think they're very important. I think that the conversation is wrong right now. But my panic meter is not that high because if you hire a head coach like Gregg Berhalter, you knew what you were getting into. And I appreciate people who didn't want to hire him. I understand that crowd. But I'll also acknowledge I thought he was the right hire. And when you do that, you take the lumps with it. And if it doesn't work out, I'll put my hand up and take the L at the end of it.
Is 2 years too long for the process to come to fruition? Wasn't there a school of thought, and you see that one really playing out right now, that with 15 games in a full year and Canada being Canada, no offense to Canada, but like I do think you're right that there is a talent deficit between Canada and the U.S. still, despite Alphonso Davies and Jonathan David.
in parts
that it doesn't manifest itself in this match. And really, I'm struggling to find a way in which the process paid off in this match. And maybe somebody can explain that to me.
I don't think there's any
Like
silver
what would be the 15 game payoff here? And I know that
Nothing.
September in the World Cup qualifiers.
Right, the process was bad. We get it. Let's move on.
Yeah, there's nothing that would there's nothing positive that came out, and there's not, as we tried to say out of the Cuba one, like patterns, and these are the moments you can. There's nothing from this game that you take from that, except potentially that it will change what the process is for the team going forward. Like, it might be a watershed moment. You'd hope that had already happened or doesn't need to happen, but there was not a moment out of this game where it was they lost to a good team on the road who needed to win this, but the center back play was good, and that's something that we're going to lock down and take for the future. Or Josh Sargent proved that he is the starting center forward, and that's something going forward. Or Weston McKennie and Christian Pulisic raised to being leaders, even though they weren't able to drag the team over the line. Not a single moment like that occurred in this game. So there's nothing to take from it.
So what do we take from it then? Doyle, what did you take from it?
I'm where these guys are in terms of like this was a watershed moment. This was I was with Bobby. Like, I didn't think that Berhalter was the perfect hire, but I thought he was within the scope of a very good hire. I think, having spoken with him, having seen the way his team played for 5 years in MLS, I think he's a good, smart soccer coach who has good ideas. I am now officially worried to some degree that he is too married to his ideas rather than to on-field realities. And, maybe if there is a silver lining, it's that this loss was so bad and so resounding and came so obviously from central midfield that he is going to have to rethink what he wants out of those positions. And the rethink is guys who can cover ground, guys who could win the ball, guys who can impose themselves, not just as soccer players who execute ideas, but physically upon the other team. And I think that dovetails well with the fact that Tyler Adams coming back from injury. I'm a big Paxton Pomacall fan. I would rather have him out there than Christian Roldan. No disrespect to Christian Roldan, but he's had a dozen games now, and he hasn't really made that kind of an impression. I think Sebastian Lletget should have, and like guys who are comfortable in these physical situations in a way that what we had on the field weren't. That's personnel-wise. And then stylistically, like, you can't play 2v4 in central midfield. That was the story of the game. Canada put 4 central midfielders out there. We had 2. They won every 50-50. That's... Berhalter was right to hammer the players for their lack of desire after the game. It was unacceptable and embarrassing. But he's got to put his hand up as well, because it doesn't matter how much desire you have if you're going 2v4 in the most important part of the field. So hopefully, I don't know how you can't see it after a game like this. Hopefully that this was, okay, what I tried for these 15 games didn't work. We're going to a standard 4-3-3. We're going to get another body in central midfield. Tyler Adams is going to win every freaking ball. And if it's not Tyler Adams, then it becomes a problem because there's no clear second ball winner on the D-mid depth chart right now. But if there's a silver lining, if there can be a silver lining from this game, it has to be that.
So one of the things which is interesting, when Gregg Berhalter got hired, and a lot of people reach out, that follow the U.S. but maybe don't follow MLS, that you're friends with or like soccer and know what's going on. One of my first responses to everyone was, I think he's a good manager. I think he's an intelligent guy, but he's flexible. The Columbus Crew, when they played the Red Bulls in the postseason 4 years ago, when they played, I can't remember now.
Atlanta 2 years ago.
Yeah, exactly.
When they went to D.C. last year.
Exactly. He showed flexibility of, I have a way that I believe the game should be played. My opponent's going to try and take advantage of that. This is where I can take advantage of these teams to win this game. Now, we're not probably at that point. Maybe the Gold Cup final and maybe this game were points where you move away from what you do because you're just trying to win. The idea for him was to establish what he wanted to do and the philosophy that he believes in. But you'd think someone who showed flexibility in the past to understand what needs to be done would show flexibility in how he develops his style with this group, which he hasn't. And the other thing I would say based on what Doyle said is there is definitely something wrong with the emotion or the culture or leadership, something off the field in this in this group, which you see play out on the field. And we have a ton of emails of just, it doesn't look like they're trying. It doesn't look like they care. None of that's true, but there is something wrong. Part of that has nothing to do with Gregg Berhalter. Part of that's internal for each of these players. Part of that has to do with the environment that these players have been brought into. Part of that also does have to do with him in terms of your style and the way you go out and play a game does affect your mindset. And these players aren't being told, it's you against the world, let's run through a wall, nothing else matters, we're just going to attack. And there's a lot of young guys who are unsure of themselves at this level, and it's easier to be given one specific role and told, run forward and run into a wall. It's what we saw Jesse Marsch do with the Red Bulls, why he got so much out of players maybe who weren't as good. It's what we saw in that halftime speech that he gave at Liverpool, where his team came back against a team that's better than him. Not just trying to compare Jesse Marsch, just saying. So I think some of that does fall on Gregg Berhalter, besides just formationally leaving space, the mentality and philosophy that the players go into these games with.
Yeah, so all it is mentality, personnel, and tactics. No big deal.
No. So I get the benefit of going last year, and I'll go through these one by one. I want to talk about the last thing you just talked about, and you're exactly right.
He's touching my arm.
Well, you're exactly.
He's just trying to connect with you.
Yeah.
You're exactly right, David, in that we talk about the idea of, do the players care? Was there intensity enough? Was there work rate enough? For me, that you have to pair the logic of the tactical plan with the way humans are and with the way the brain functions. And within your tactics, you need to set up a system that keeps the brain active and allows you to get into flow, right? So why did they look passive in midfield? Because they were in a passive middle block, trying to keep the game in front of them. But it's not necessarily about the tactics of whether the passive middle block was good or not. It's moving side to side and keeping the game in front of you is an energy suck. It is hard to move side to side, keep the game in front of you, maybe connect a pass in the half turn, switch the field, to do these elements and then go and kill and then go to win the ball. Right? So the biggest takeaway for me here was that you can never not pair the logic of the tactics that you're trying to do and how it makes your players feel. Because if you don't win that intensity battle, you're done so, right? So you need to set up a tactic that even if it doesn't make the most sense, it allows and helps your players to get into that flow mindset to compete. That's one.
Yeah.
And
that makes perfect sense.
So that's my main takeaway tactically. In terms of the flexibility that Gregg Berhalter demonstrated, I don't think that he needed to show flexibility to this point, right? Because we see it in Major League Soccer, we see it everywhere, and yes, the difference between the club and the national game, but coaches have priorities. When you talk about their periodization, their methodology, you have to start somewhere. You have to start with something. In Major League Soccer, we see it all the time. What is the first thing that Guillermo Schelotto or Luchi Gonzalez worked on? Schelotto was a defensive shape. Luchi was the build-out. You get 3-4 months into the season, you say, clearly Dallas had not gotten to the creating chances and finishing part of their periodization, of their progress as a team. The LA Galaxy never got to the possession part, right? You have to have priorities. Gregg Berhalter prioritized the possession part. He prioritized making these players believe, as the United States men's national team, that they could harm an opponent by using the ball, right? I think we are now to the point when we can say, okay, that needs to go to the back burner. And remember, 4 phases to the game. That is one phase. So the idea that he needs to abandon that completely, to me, is wrong.
Just deprioritize it.
Deprioritize it and think about the other 3 phases, right? The defensive set and the defensive phase, when you win the ball into the attacking transition, and when you lose the defensive transition, because that is where they're losing. This is not about a team that is what's the word that people use? Ideologue, right? He's not an ideologue for possession. He prioritizes that, but now you just need to focus on the other phases, right? When your team doesn't have it, should you get more pressure on the ball? Should you step up on your line? So my only takeaway from all of this is that it's not that Gregg needs to abandon what he's been doing, but add the other elements. And as Matt said, deprioritize one and prioritize the other. And we can get into how those details might work closer to the next window. But that distinction between phases is important, but it's also just the next phase. It's the next wave of soccer, right? My last point is, to this point, we could talk about a team being good at A or B, and it was usually about possession. It was usually about possession. The game is too complicated. Coaches are too good. There's too much video. There's too much sports science that allows you to train more. And if you can't do all 4, and if those 4 don't integrate and sync seamlessly, you're in trouble. And that is, for me, Berhalter's big miss so far.
Are we in trouble? Bruce Arenas says that, and this is Bruce, when he says things, you should probably listen to it, not because you should agree with it, but because you should think about whether you agree with it and why you don't. He basically came out and said to The Athletic that Gregg and staff are treating
What
this
up,
like
Sam?
Yeah, what up? What up? Nice white button down, bro. That Gregg and staff are treating this like a club team, and you can't at the international level. And I think what you said to me, Bobby, makes sense. But my internal worry and anxiety then comes from, okay, well, basically this whole year is passed, and if there are 4 different phases that we need to figure out, and it doesn't actually feel like we've mastered the first, and there are 3 more to go, and we haven't really shown mastery or anything close to it of those, and the player pool is not going to change, and we hope that Tyler Adams...
the player pool is going to change.
We hope that Tyler Adams' groin is going to be fine.
Yeah.
Tim Weah will come back.
John Anthony Brooks.
Okay, well, that's a wild card.
Also, all the young players.
Josie, Timothy Weah.
Okay.
Even if this next
You
wave
could argue there are
doesn't-
7 starters that weren't on the field on top of we're hoping more players developing, blah, blah, blah. Can I just say this?
Yeah.
I would say the phase that Bobby talks about, which Gregg Berhalter has locked in on, is probably one that is most difficult for U.S. players because we've never done it, and it's not something. So I would say moving forward, most of these players, their club focuses on playing in transition. Most of these players are more comfortable playing in transition. So I would say going forward, it should get simpler as you work on those things. Plus, you still have what you worked on, right? You're not going to lose what you've done over the last 12 months, I guess it is, 9 months, whatever he's had. You're not going to lose any of that. You're going to add to that is the point. And you can see it, especially in offensive transition moments where Pulisic slows up a little and he can explode and beat that guy, but he holds up and finds or Sargent finds the ball back to Bradley. So as you add and you unleash them and say, just run and add that transition, okay, now they get into the final third. They don't have an option. Now they lay it back and you can control the play and stuff like that. But I would say what's happened so far, hopefully, is the hardest part. And therefore, there is a template for moving forward and getting better over the next 12 months.
What are the next? It's really more like 11 because that's how many it's going to be till World Cup qualifying. Mm-hmm. What does that have to look like? We're here sort of, rehashing what we already know and what we've already seen. Try to imagine a little bit the future. Like if you're Gregg Berhalter and you're sitting in your meeting rooms this week with your staff, you're saying, well, that's crap. That didn't go the way we wanted it to go, but we think we can fix it. What does he start to do? What has to happen other than players getting healthy?
Well, yeah, that's the first thing, right, is just the general player pool. Because you could have this whole conversation with that game is different with Tyler Adams, a more athletic center back, because if I'm talking about doing these other things, stepping into the field, more aggressive, you just can't have Tim Ream play that game. So all of a sudden, John Anthony Brooks is in. Josie out the door is healthy, right? There's a really interesting component to all of this in Josh Sargent's performance. And just shows that Josie is still that guy. If Timothy Weah is healthy, all of a sudden, Serginho Dest joins the team.
Maybe not.
Right. But it just has this idea that the player pool is naturally already better than what we saw. And yes, it's low right now, so you can't, if you miss 4 or 5 guys, we're donezo. That's a fair statement. Not to mention the players coming through. So it's hard to have this conversation, especially when you talk about the fact that Gregg's ideals about how he does want to keep the ball would only get better with those players on the field.
And I'll just add this as well. 3 games ago, Canada lost 3-2 to Haiti in one of their biggest games in years in just catastrophic fashion. Just got one of the all-time rug pulled out from under you moments for this national team program that's had a lot of them. And 3 games later, they smashed the U.S. 2-0 in another huge game. It doesn't need to take an entire year to turn this thing around. It takes remembering what the fundamental is for every soccer team in the entire world. You have to win the ball in central midfield. You have to do it. If you can't, it doesn't matter if you're as talented as England or France or Germany or whoever. If you actually look at the 2018 World Cup, Germany sucked at doing that. And that's why Germany got eliminated when they did. France was really, really good at that. And that led to France counterattacking their way to the World Cup. It happens at the highest levels. It happens at the lowest levels. It certainly happens in CONCACAF. It's what this great decade for Costa Rica has been built upon. The ability to be just rock solid in central midfield. And Canada mimicked that in this game. They're going to keep doing that going forward. The U.S. need to remember that that has to be part of their DNA, no matter who is on the pitch. And Berhalter has to give them the tools to impose that upon whoever they're playing.
And it could be possible that Canada wins this game and plays Haiti in 2 weeks and loses again.
Yep.
Because it's just a fundamental idea in this sport that playing against the ball, it's the old Arsene Wenger quote, right, to Mourinho. Playing against the ball is easier than playing with the ball. And right now, U.S. men's national team, and I would say it started with Bruce in the Costa Rica game at home, good old fun Bruce, when he came back around, tried to change the paradigm with the national team and saying we are going to be a team that tries to play just fundamentally as a country at the youth levels, at the youth national team levels, not so much Major League Soccer right now with where the teams are at, but with the men's national team, they are trying to become an organization, a system that controls games by playing with the ball, which is just inherently harder. That's not a defensive Berhalter, but I can simply say that I felt it needed to happen, which is why I'm more willing to give it leniency.
And it kills me when I think back to, because like this has become something of a running problem for the U.S. at all levels, because if you look at that U20 World Cup team, they smashed France in the round of 16 with a certain lineup and players who could win the ball in central midfield. And then in the round, in the quarterfinal, Tab Ramos put out Chris Durkin and Alex Mendez, neither of whom could ever win a 50-50, and they got smashed by Ecuador. We went out in the U20 World Cup for the same exact reason that we got beat by Canada on Tuesday night.
November 15th in Orlando.
Got to stop making these mistakes.
U.S. hosting Canada, a big game, both for sort of the mood around the national team, but also for Group A in the CONCACAF Nations League, trying to get the semis and the finals. We'll see what happens. Canada trying to get to the Hex. Congratulations to them. A wonderful result. Any
Jose
last?
Mourinho, Arsene Wenger, Diego Simeone. We got some references in this show. This was good. Wenger, right, let's go.
All right,
on that,
all right,
we got to move on.
All right.
Hey, thanks for the space to have that conversation, Wiebe.
Producer Anders, I want you to know, was in my ear saying to wrap it up, and I thought,
Anders.
we're not going to listen to Anders this time around.
Tyrant.
The greenest skies I've
By the
ever
way, though,
seen
the
are in
Adrian Heath
Anders.
Gnome Army is in my ears right now saying, you need to talk about the Audi 2019 MLS Cup playoffs. The bracket challenge is out. Go make your picks. There's some awesome prizes.
Did Minnesota make it?
I think someone at this table picked them to win it. I think Adrian Heath might have noticed that someone at this table picked them to win it. We will talk about that very shortly. But first, we will start with the first game in the Western Conference on Saturday. The second-seeded Seattle Sounders are hosting FC Dallas, the 7th seed, snuck in on the final day at 3:30 p.m. Eastern. You can watch on FS1, Fox Deportes, TSN, and TVA Sports up in Canada. We have TVA. You are very close to the TVA guys. So
my guy Nico, shout out.
I should have known. I got corrected there. Matchday Central has the previews and postgame for everything in the playoffs. So if you're sitting around hour before the game, know that you can probably head over to @MLS on Twitter, or I think it's just on Twitter. Yeah, just on Twitter. So go there, get the pregame shows. I think you are in
Toronto.
Toronto.
I'm back, baby. Toronto, you get playoff games, you get Dave Goss.
Exactly. That's what you're looking for.
That's what they've been playing for.
FC Dallas actually has a win and a draw against Seattle this year. In June, a 2-1 win at home. No Ladero for Seattle. And then they drew 0-0 at Seattle September 18th.
Playing some of the ugliest soccer in the world.
Hey, ugly will work in this.
Did I do this to you on Monday or last week where I was like, I have this world in which Dallas wins, and you're like, tell me, and I explained it, and you're like, yeah.
Here we go. Dallas will win if, Dave.
Oh, yeah, X. Here's my X.
Here you go.
I'm off the hosting.
Baby.
So, veteran center backs and a good goalkeeper. Keep the game in front of them. Seattle have struggled to break down teams that sit deep, hence Dallas getting a draw about 4 weeks ago in Seattle midweek. For Dallas, they're comfortable on the counterattack. They've got speed. I assume in this game they'll start Michael Barrios up top to have his speed.
Yo, did you see Big Z going over the top against Sporting KC, though?
Yeah, that is true. Unfortunately, Sporting KC didn't make the postseason as the number 2 seed in the Western Conference, probably for some of those reasons. So you have that ability on the counter. You have Jesus Ferreira and hopefully Paxton Pomykal healthy, who can play in transition in those moments. And then you've got Cobra, Big Z, who's in incredible form.
Nobody wants to say his name, do they?
No. Do you?
No, I don't.
Okay.
I'm just saying, nobody.
Zdeněk Ondrasik.
Ooh.
Nice.
A guy.
Flexing on us.
Doyle getting his Eastern European rep up. You can either bring him off the bench and you know he's in good form. Michael Barrios scored a couple goals against Sporting KC. It's as confident as you're ever going to get. Michael Barrios as consistent as you're ever going to get him, but he has that speed to pressure up top. So the elements all exist. It probably won't happen. But if you want to template it, it's quite simple in that they're clean defensively. They can be dangerous in transition if they are clinical with their chances. And Seattle opens themselves up to all of that because they're forced to overload numbers because they really can't break a defense down outside of Nicolas Lodero's individual ability.
I just want to add here that every week we do a hit for Sky News over in England, and every week they ask about Rooney and Zlatan Vela. This week, you know who crept into the conversation?
Michael Barrios?
No.
No.
The Cobra. But the thing is, they didn't know that his nickname was the Cobra. I got the chance to tell the country of England about Andrasik's Cobra tattoo on his
I
back.
didn't need another reason to hate England.
Actually, the Cobra tattoo is not actually the tattoo I like the most. It's the huge rosary that doesn't like conform to gravity. Because gravity says that thing should be pretty equal, but it's like snaking around. I like it. I think it's very creative of the Cobra. Now, FC Dallas have not won much on the road this year.
3-11-3.
Yeah,
Not won much in Seattle ever.
correct.
The last time they did, though, 2011,
Were you on the
the
field?
closer came in.
The human victory cigar, Bobby.
What would your if you were a closer, what would your song be when they subbed you on? Would you have a closer song?
Yeah, of course. I know exactly what it would be.
What would it be?
It would be Backstreet Boys, I Want It That Way.
Oh,
It's a great song.
I just want to say in that game,
Probably wasn't what we were
yeah,
looking
no,
for in this
confusingly intimidating.
category. Yeah.
Like what the who?
What's yours?
Bobby Warshaw? Yeah, I don't know.
you've thought about this.
I've thought about
Lie
it, but
collapse. Eminem.
never. You come back to me. Come back to me. In the
That's
mailbag
my Billy
on this.
Wagner song.
How about that? I can
Armando
see
Benitez.
the scenario because it feels like there's something missing with the Seattle Sounders this season. They're second in the Western Conference. They had a fine season, but it's not the Sounders team we've seen in the past. Now they are gamers, so I'll give this one to you, Doyle.
Mm-hmm.
If X Seattle Sounders win this game and move on,
I mean, just everything points to them moving on.
it's
So
pretty obvious.
if
It's pretty obvious.
things unfold the way they have, like 85% of the time these two teams have played in Seattle, I think Dallas are good and fun. I don't trust any other finishers. Or the one I do trust in Andrasik, if he's on the field, they can't really defend. They can't stop you from building out of the back. And if you allow, like Kim Ki-hee especially, to start pinging those passes, Seattle get the ball a little bit earlier, and then they're suddenly not this ponderous build-up team. They're actually a team that could be a little open and a little fun, and they have Raul Ruiz-Diaz, and they have Jordan Morris who's scoring some goals, and they still have Nico Lodero. If everything plays out the way that...
yeah.
Where the smart money is.
Sure.
they
Logic
win.
tells you that the Seattle Sounders should win this game.
Bigger upset. Would it be Dallas over Seattle or New England over Atlanta?
I was going to say, here's a Bobby Warshaw question for you, and I didn't. And then he asked the exact
Where
question.
you at? Come on now.
What's your answer, Andrew?
What would be a bigger upset?
Mhm.
I think it would be New England over Atlanta.
Really? I think it would be Dallas.
Really?
Because New England have arguably, in any game they play, the three best players on the field in Heel, Bo, and you could argue
They're the three best
the
players on
goalkeeper.
the field
Maybe?
over Joseph Martinez.
Okay. You could argue. Joseph Martinez would
You
have.
could argue
but
three of the
after
four,
Joseph-
especially if Miles Robinson is hurt.
Yeah,
which it doesn't.
he's not playing. I think they've already said he's not playing.
I don't know if I believe them, but that's fair.
That's true. They said a lot of things about Joseph Martinez too. But look, all word is that he did it bad to his hammy with the U.S. I think it would be FC Dallas because they're younger, less was expected of them. They haven't been good on the road. New England has been effective
But
at
they
the very
just
least.
lost 3-1 in that exact building.
Dallas
against
just
them.
lost 3 out of the Rapids. Like, let's not go to recent
But
results.
not against Seattle. Like specific. All right, fine. Yeah.
But they were in that game.
It's
That game-
51-49
that game, I know
for
you were
me.
there. They were
Yeah.
in that game. They missed chances. They
Agreed.
had their moments.
Agreed.
And then Joseph did Joseph things, and it was over. Now, Joseph's probably going to do Joseph things, and it'll be over, but I think it would be FC Dallas.
My side comes more from the Seattle-Atlanta side. I think there's more expectations right now after winning MLS Cup
On
with the
Atlanta.
group they have on Atlanta
Okay, I
than
agree
on
with that.
Seattle. Seattle are probably the healthiest they've been all year, but we haven't seen that group for a while. So the like maybe if they play the way they can with everyone on Saturday, the perception then changes out of that game, being like, "Oh, Seattle's back. This is the team we saw in April."
Hasn't Seattle not lost in 5?
I think it's in 4.
I mean, either way.
and they have
struggled to win.
Right,
they
but
have-
that's what I'm saying.
actually,
Something's missing, and yet they still get the result.
they
they
can't
have
break
3
teams down.
shutouts in 4.
Yeah.
And they had that stretch where they were giving up multiple goals every game, and they finally said, "We're just going to drop everybody deep." And they got, it's kind of worked, and Stephen Fry is still a match-winning goalkeeper.
I bet you that's exactly how I went. We're just going to drop everyone.
Nobody expects much from Real Salt Lake or Portland Timbers. At least that's my read on things. 10 p.m. Eastern on Saturday. ESPN News, ESPN Deportes, TSN, and TVA in Canada. Portland has won both the games this year, May and August. 2-1 win at RSL, and RSL has the second most home wins in Major League Soccer this year to LAFC. So it was huge for them to get this home game. I picked RSL to win on a gut, and also on the fact that I don't think the Timbers are much of.
Why? Because this is the same Timbers team as last year, except they should be better. Obovasi is a better player than last year. Paredes is a better player than he was last year. Diego Valeri, maybe he's not as good as last year, but he was second in the league in assists. He's still Diego Valeri.
Didn't Diego
Sebastian
Valeri sit out the
LeBlanco.
last game? Isn't Diego? Diego Valeri is not last year's Diego Valeri. And I'm not saying on the field. I'm saying mentally.
I'm not sure I agree with that because he's playing for a contract. So I think we should have high expectations. We should be treating the Timbers like they are the defending Western Conference champions. I know they're going to miss Brian Fernandez, but he's not the whole team. He's never been the whole team. And Sebastian Blanco came back 3-4 games ago, and they have been much better.
Well, he is the key to everything.
They have been much better. They have a hot goalkeeper in Steve Clark. They have, like, Larry Smabiala is back. Him and Tuiloma, when they're together, they are a good defense. I feel like teams are sleeping on the Timbers.
When you go to the last year thing, that's the difference. Not saying he was peak, but Liam Ridgewell last year had to play in the playoffs because Tuiloma and Cascante couldn't. They weren't good enough. They're not consistent enough. And I would say a lot of for Mabiala that made him good was Ridgewell's organization next to him, and they've lost.
I think you're giving Ridgewell too much credit in terms of organization. I think they brought in Mabiala because Ridgewell couldn't do the organizing. But anyway, this is essentially the same team that made MLS Cup last year out of the Western Conference. And the difference between them and RSL, the last time these two teams played, RSL was better than Portland. Portland won 1-0 because Portland has Diego Valeri. Time before that, Portland won because Portland has Sebastian Blanco. They have match winners. They've proved it over the years. And I think people are sleeping on this team because they had that absolutely turgid stretch that lasted through mid-September, but they came out of it over the last 3 games of the season.
Okay, that's the X for the Portland Timbers. I think you made your case for why they would win this one. Bobby, take the X happens RSL win side.
Because you know that Portland Timbers can win, but only a certain way, right? If they try and dominate the ball, if they say we're going to be the better team at Rio Tinto, can they win? Right? Because they made MLS Cup. Everything you said is exactly right. They made MLS Cup last year with the same team. They did it play it in a certain way. Mm-hmm. You know it's the way they should play. You know it's the way they should play. You know it's the way they should play.
But less than you guys, but I do know.
But I'm not sure that Gio Savarese knows that, right? How many times has he come out, especially against a team that the Timbers are supposed to be, as an organization, superior to, and tried to play a different way? Tried to have the ball, try to create chances of possession, try to play through the lines, and they just can't do it. And if they can't do it, RSL are organized, their lines are tight, they've got good players on the break, and they will punish Portland for their arrogance and their inability to play the way that they think they should be playing.
But if Gio made that switch for last year's playoffs, why wouldn't he make it this year?
No, that's a fair question.
He didn't just make it for the playoffs, though, did he? He went back to it with a month and a half left in the regular season. It was
had more time.
We got to switch it up. This is not working. We won't make the playoffs if we do this.
It was similar. Early in the year, they struggled. They reverted to it right around that Dallas game in the 6th or 7th game of the year. Then they tried to pass again. Then they reverted back.
But they reverted in August last year, and this year they're still doing it. Can I throw one X factor in, which is Savarino?
I like how you go I like how you throw the actual X.
You gotta let people know the X all day. Savarino, because he is a match winner for RSL. He's probably he is. He can be. I'm not saying he will.
He can be.
But if he's on, that changes. The same as if Josie Altidor's on. The same
No, it's not the same because we've seen Josie do it.
Okay, but he's
Savarino had 8 goals and 5 assists this year.
But he has the ability, especially where he plays against Portland, to tear the team apart.
Okay. I mean, I agree.
Jefferson Savarino goes off. Oh my god!
I wrote the same exact thing in my Western Conference preview, but
which I read.
There are RSL went 1-9-2 against Western Conference playoff teams.
Yeah, they don't have a good record against.
We've been saying about Savarino and whoever and Rusnak on this team. We've been saying about them all year, and keeps not happening.
I mean, it happened enough to get them to 3rd place.
I mean, look, if they had Dairon Asprilla,
I don't think that was that. I think honestly,
he's so riled up. He let on Dairon Asprilla reference go.
All right, it wasn't that didn't happen enough to get them to 3rd place. They just didn't give up bad goals. They've given up 8 goals in the second half of the season, and they beat all the bad teams that they should beat. When they met good teams, they couldn't get it done. Like, and not even good teams, just more talented teams. Like, they were better than the Galaxy in September. Galaxy still won 2-1 because the Galaxy have Christian Pavone and Zlatan Ibrahimovic.
Well, Jeremy Abobasi is not Zlatan. That's no knock on Jeremy Abobasi, but he was good in the playoffs last year. We'll see if he can get it done this time. I picked RSL. Anybody else? Anybody else joining me in the riot who believe that when the battle has begun?
It's the only one I haven't picked yet.
Oh, that's an easy out.
I know.
Yeah, I picked RSL. We'll see how that works out for me. The Sunday game, Minnesota United, LA Galaxy, 8:30 p.m. Eastern, ESPN Deportes, TSN TVA. Before we get into the game, which is, I think, personally the most fascinating game of the first round of the Western Conference, congratulations to Ike Opara, the defender of the year in Major League Soccer. 2 out of 3 years now for Ike getting that top spot. That is Chad Marshall territory. He had 32% of the final vote. It went like this: player percentage, 25.75, club percentage, 27.27, and the media, 44.88. I believe that all 4 of us are probably Ike Opara.
Well, Ike is part of the media now.
True.
Right? Because
So where did they
he
count
has his own
vote?
podcast.
If Benny,
Did
if
he
we're able
vote?
to,
Did he vote for himself?
I don't know. We're waiting to see what happens. Maybe he just voted for Mike Grella across the board. That's what he says he does normally. We're waiting to see if Benny Feilhaber is going to come free
Wait,
during
did he
this
get
podcast.
to vote twice as a player and then as part of the media?
Even if he did, it wouldn't have mattered because he won this thing by a full 16
I think he was
percentage
forced
points.
to plead the fifth.
Oh, God. Walker Zimmerman was second. Miles Robinson was third, which is surprising to me. I was happy that Maxime Chanot got a push-up in there. The club vote on him was really, really high. Eddie Segura and then Aaron Long. So that's a pretty good group there. There is nary an outside back, which should surprise no one. The players went Ike, Zimmerman, and then Robinson. Do we have this ring true to everyone? Yeah?
I think this is what we've talked about over the last month that we expect.
I'm very curious now to see what this means in the offseason once Minnesota United season is over, given what happened last offseason with Ike Opara and his desire for a little bit more money.
It's what he hasn't gotten still. He got traded to get more money. Neither is Lee Wynn.
No.
Andrew.
No, Lee Wynn didn't win a
True.
X of the year.
Andrew, Minnesota United will beat the Los Angeles Galaxy if... Wait, give me a sec. Wait, give me a sec.
Sorry.
If X.
Okay, you have to watch on YouTube to see that ridiculous. What was that, like synchronized swimming move from these two?
They spend a lot of time.
If the Galaxy back line
on that for a while.
plays like the Galaxy back line, this is a Galaxy team that has lost more games since the start of May than any other team in Major League Soccer that is not FC Cincinnati or the Houston Dynamo. Than any other team. That's insane. That's crazy. They have the propensity to absolutely leak goals. And as you wrote, Bobby, which I generally agree with, the spine of Minnesota United is really, really good. You've got Vito Minona in goal, who the second half of the season was better than the first half. He has been a match saver at times for this team. Ike Opara, we know about him. I think he makes Michael Boxall better because Boxall can just be like a straight up, almost like Aurelian Collin style hunter at times. Like, just go get it, dude. You got a guy behind you that's going to cover up all and any mistake. I think Ozzy, Gregush, pretty good like that. Darwin Quintero, maybe you get the Open Cup Darwin Quintero. Maybe you get the first 3 months of the
But not
MLS
the
career.
Open Cup final one.
No, because then you'd have to start him.
Awkward.
See if that would happen. And then, Mason Toy gets on a heater, or maybe Angelo Rodriguez is
it Mason
a
Toy
DP
right now?
player? I don't know. One of the two. And then
Scored
they have,
again. He scored again for the US-23, so maybe that breaks him out of his funk. He was terrible in September.
Yeah. Then they have a bunch of guys that, like, maybe Ethan Finley, Kevin Molino could be magic. Like, I don't trust this team, but I think this team has
Robin
every opportunity
Lod.
to do it. And Galaxy are just going to step on a rake and bash themselves in the face. Right?
I mean, it seems
Ike
that way.
Opara wins the 1v1 matchup with Zlatan.
It'll be a 2v1 because they'll bring Box all over as well.
Yeah, I
They'll
mean,
try
they'll
to
just-
bracket him.
yeah, they'll just
I mean,
bang
this is
him.
the thing that Bobby kind of alluded to earlier in the program. The Galaxy still don't have like a real way of creating chances other than like figure out how to get it to Zlatan in the 18, and that's become easier with the return with Christian Pavone, and it'll become easier if Roman Alessandrini returns, which is reportedly happening as well. And they have all that talent. The game I expect will be played in Minnesota's 18, and that should allow Minnesota to get out on the break. But Minnesota has 10 goals in 3 months. They have 10 goals in their last 10 games. It's and Galaxy have given up 8 in their last 2. I don't know. I don't know if anything here would surprise me. If you go back to May, the Galaxy have one of the worst records in the league. If you look at them since then, like other than that 3-game winning streak they had in the middle of September, they've been just downright terrible. However, since the Gold Cup break, against playoff teams, 4 wins, 4 losses, 2 draws. That's pretty good.
Hey, I saw you take them for MLS Cup champion, Matt.
Did
Minnesota
I
explain yourself?
Oh, Minnesota. Well, that was social media picks. Editorial gets different. Matt Doyle. One's for the brand.
So this is Ike Opara.
One's for the
Which one is this one? This is that.
I'm still trying to figure that
the
out.
picks are for the brand. What are you talking about? There's not like it's what. And by the way, Adrian, he saw those.
Good. He's a loyal reader. Nothing from this game would surprise me because Minnesota's defense has been very good, but they have struggled mightily in attack. Galaxy's defense has been abhorrent, but they've scored 60 goals. And they have 3 guys who could just kill you like that.
This is the game that has the most potential to be 4-1 both ways.
Yeah. And
Or
I don't even
4-4.
know how to break it down otherwise. Right? like there's just not all that much. Like the Minnesota's defenders are really good and LA's aren't. That's about it.
Christian Pavone is really good.
Yep.
Maybe Matt Nair gets caught up. He gets in behind him. At that point, it's hard to defend Zlatan.
Bobby and I literally did a breakdown of Ike Opara snuffing out like 4 different attacks.
Yeah.
With Matt and Air getting caught upfield and like just going zoop and just erasing it.
Please watch Inside the Audi Player Index.
Yes.
By the way, just because, as you know, Adrian Heath says things we sometimes talk about. We now have the Gnome Army here, thanks to Eric Durkee, their PR guy. Adrian Heath saw your picks, and he wonders what the criteria to be an expert is. I guess,
You just have to get hired.
Fair, Adrian.
I'm on a 3-year plan toward expertise.
Exactly. You're on your way to the bachelor degree. Master's comes later. Perfect mashup of MLS.com saltiness, Heath, and The Athletic. We're living rent free in both of your heads. Now it's time to talk to
Or
Benny.
They're living rent free.
Oh, we're all living.
It feels like Adrian Heath gets on the ETR rundown whenever he chooses.
That's true. That's true.
He dictates the game.
You're right. We never talked about them before except to say how bad they are.
He might sit in a low block, but when he presses
true.
in space, he controls the game.
Okay. I'll take that. Benny Feilhaber just says that he's available. So should we talk to Benny? Maybe about the favorite in the West and the Audi 2018 MLS Cup playoffs. That's LAFC. Let's do it. Benny's on the phone now. What's up, man?
Hey, thanks for having me, guys. Always a pleasure.
A fellow podcaster / maybe media member. We were trying to decide if Ike had 2 votes for himself, I guess now, player and media side. How do you think of yourself, Benny? Because you're obviously a player, but now we hear you on BS the Podcast, and we actually did your title as just host of BS the Podcast because that's maybe that's pretty important these days.
Yeah, I guess I definitely don't see myself as part of the media yet, but maybe the podcast is reaching new heights. So I guess there's some truth in it.
You get better guests than we do. Can I just say that?
I mean, you can say whatever you want. We'll take all kinds of compliments.
Take us behind the scenes, man. How did this thing come back around? What are you hoping to do with it?
Well, it started with Sal pestering me to get this going, and we always kind of talked about it throughout the years after the Benny Feilhaber show, where me and Sal did little funny things, I guess, with guests here from Sporting Kansas City, and the fans here loved it. So after that, we kind of thought maybe one day we can do a podcast because maybe we're not living in the same place, so video might be tough, but podcast would be cool. So Sal, having retired, kind of kept pestering me, let's do it. And I finally said, when I came back here to Kansas City this year, it's a perfect time to start it because we'll have at least a fan base based out of Kansas City. So we started it. We didn't expect it would amount to what it has. And I think if you guys listened to the first couple, we kind of didn't know what the hell we were doing either. But
True.
It's become something. It's become something fun. We've been able to get guys to kind of loosen up and just talk about silly things, and we've even gotten lucky to get some stories that we weren't expecting with Carlos, and some things that got picked up by big international media that we never expected, and so it's just kind of blown up, and it's just been fun. But we keep telling ourselves, let's just try and have a good time, put out good information out there, have a good talk with whoever we're interviewing, and hopefully that's enough for people to enjoy it.
If I understand this correctly, when you came back to Kansas City this year, you had finally just sold your house from when you left Kansas City. Did Sal operate as your real estate agent, finding you a new place?
Oh God, I feel bad for Sal as it is that he's a real estate agent. So I literally crush him probably once every 2 episodes. I'm hoping that with that new team in San Diego that Landon's starting up, that he can convince Sal to come out of real estate and retire from that and unretire from soccer. So, but yeah, Sal definitely had no part in selling my house. If he had, I probably would have fired him because it took too long to sell it.
All right. So, look, if you need to sell or purchase a house in the Las Vegas area, Sal Zizzo is your man, of course. You can check that out. And plus, the BS the Podcast is great. Go subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. I know I enjoy it. The Mike Grell episode was awesome. Chris Wondolowski. I love the Michael Parkhurst one. Stu Holden was good. They're all good in their own way. So go check that out. But, Benny, let's talk soccer here. LAFC, you know it intimately from last year. Mark Anthony Kaye pulled up with the hamstring injury. Everybody who's a neutral in this MLS playoff thing groaned at the time. How much does that hurt LAFC, the juggernaut that has been this year?
Yeah, it hurts. I don't know how serious it is. I actually reached out to him I think I texted him still during the game. So he didn't know how severe it was. I think he's probably getting it checked out today and maybe even yesterday. I think he had an MRI or something, but I don't know, how severe it is. He doesn't know, and it'll be interesting to see, how long he's out for, if he's going to miss his first game or the entirety of the playoffs, because he's a big part. I mean, we lost him last year in an injury as well, probably halfway through the year, and it was a big loss for us. And we didn't really recover as much as we would have liked. So, is it a big loss? It is. But having said that, there's Lee, who's a great player. He can play. He can fill in for him. I'm imagining that'll be the like for like that Bob will do. And as much as Mark has been fantastic this year, I still see Atuesta and Latif as even more important players for the team right now because of Atuesta's been, for me, the second most important player on that team after Carlos. And Latif's been a guy that's come in and does something so different than everybody else, So those two guys are extremely important as well. Not to take anything away from Mark, but hopefully Lee can come in there and do a job for him.
Benny, you said on the podcast, your podcast, that Bob did most of his work last year. And I remember being at a training and watching him sort of move players, especially midfielders, Latif and Mark Anthony Kaye, and maybe even yourself. I don't remember that. Moving them around and positioning them and showing them where they needed to be. How did he sort of build this unit that I think a lot of us maybe didn't see jumping to this height this early? Because Latif was like a jitterbug forward sub in Kansas City, and he's become a top-of-the-line central midfielder in MLS. Mark Anthony Kaye couldn't get an MLS contract, and now he's there as well and on the international level, and Atuesta's just class. How did Bob do this?
Well, you're right on the right. You're on the right track with the positioning and training, and he would. People would get so annoyed at how many times he would stop practice in preseason last year to tell people this is how you got to position your body. This is how you got to take it on the foot. This is how you got to be on the half turn and the half space, and that's kind of what I said on the podcast. But it's true. I mean, he literally would stop it every 30 seconds or so whenever he saw something that he felt was necessary to tell the players. And so I do think that he did the most of his work. I think he should win Coach of the Year this year, but he did most of his work last year because, Mark Anthony Kaye, I remember, I think he was the third center midfielder that we had signed. So we signed Callum Malice, then we signed myself, and then Mark. And when Mark came in, he was more designated as like a winger / outside back, and he came in and Bob put him in the middle. And he didn't have any he didn't look like a midfielder. He looked like a guy that was uncomfortable in tight spaces, a guy that needed more time and space on the ball to trap it and play it off to the next player. And Bob worked on him, in the same way that you saw in training. And so he started getting him in the right spots and in the right position and then facing the right direction, taking it off the right foot. And I think he made a big difference in being able to take the talent that Mark has, which is a very big part of his game, but also making sure that he's using it in the right way. And I think that's something that he hadn't been coached yet. And so he was able to turn that talent into a final product. And I mean, Mark's been fantastic ever since the beginning of last year, where he kind of grew into the role. And like I said, was a big loss for us when he got injured. And so that's what Bob does. I mean, he is incessant in getting the things the way he wants them to be.
Take us behind the scenes, though, because now Bob has a unique situation. We've never seen this before because of the new format. He has 2.5 weeks between his last MLS regular season game and the postseason with this bye. What do you think this group's going to look like? What's Bob doing in these 2.5 weeks? Do you think there's going to be a negative or positive knock-on going into their first postseason game?
I think that Bob will be doing the exact same thing he always does. I mean, in terms of training, it's not going to be any different. You know, it's gonna be like as if there was a bye week, you know, so to speak. In terms of the playoffs and MLS regular season, it won't be any different in terms of training. Having said that, I think it's not. I have a hard time seeing this being a positive for them. You know, a 2.5 week time period without a game. I don't think that they were playing as well as they had throughout the season towards the back end of the season. Obviously, they missed Carlos for a while, and I think that had some effect. I think Bob realized that they were going to win Supporter Shield, and so he made some changes as well to maybe save some bodies towards the end of the year. But all in all, I don't think they were playing as well. They were still playing very well, but not as well as they were. So this 2.5 week break, I think it's tough for them because as much as everybody else has a break, they have a game before. And whoever comes out of that Minnesota Galaxy game is going to have some confidence after they won. Obviously, Galaxy has had success against LAFC. Minnesota tied at home and beat them on the road. So, I mean, they're both going to have something to go off of, where LAFC, I could see them being, you know, potentially a little bit rusty, you know, and I do think that the 2.5 week layover will be a negative for them. But they're still the best team in the league. They're the favorites to win the whole thing, and they're playing at home. So, and they got the best player in the league on their team. So all that should make up for it, but it'll be tough.
All right, so if you were to play against them, or you were the coach, what are the first two things you would put on the whiteboard as the ways to beat LAFC?
I would say I would put a lot of guys behind the ball. I think if you look at the teams that have done well at LAFC, they're the teams that, you know, play off the counter. I think Minnesota did well at that. It wasn't a pretty game in terms of what they looked like, but it was effective. Portland in the Open Cup game. You've seen some other teams play a little bit different. I think Galaxy played a little bit different when they played there. They kind of, you know, they definitely played a little bit on the counter, but not sitting as deep. In the second half they did, but not in the first half. So I think you have to sit deep, and I think the place that LAFC can be a little bit vulnerable is on the counterattack. You know, Bob wants to play the beautiful way, and he shows clips of Barcelona. He wants to play similar to them, and to be fair, they have for large portions of the season. And so the one thing that can happen is you send one too many bodies up, and there's a lot of space in the back. And if somebody's able to kind of break out of that initial, you know, counter press that they have, there's space in behind. And so that's where teams can take advantage of it. I think that's how teams will try and take advantage of it. And of course, on top of all that, when you are defending, you got to be, you got to know where number 10 is. And so Carlos can shoot from anywhere. So as much as you got 10 guys behind the ball, you got to have one guy pretty close to him.
It'd be interesting to see what happens with Walker Zimmerman. We saw that nasty injury that he suffered that kept him out of the U.S. national team. As we've said, we hope he is okay, but if he and Kay can't go, that could be a big factor for the Galaxy's part of their equation. Excuse me, LAFC part of their equation. Could be a factor for Galaxy. I'm thinking about the Galaxy Minnesota right now because I assume, Benny, that LAFC want the Galaxy. Am I right about that?
Don't count out Defender of the Year, Ike Opara.
Oh.
I'm not counting him out.
Benny, you got your finger on a lot of pots.
You already have everybody hopes Galaxy plays LAFC, but we'll see. I think Galaxy have a really good chance. to beat Minnesota. I think it's a 50-50. I really do. I think it's a coin toss between Galaxy and Minnesota. If I were to genuinely ask all the LAFC players who they want to play, I think they tell me Minnesota. I don't think anybody wants to play Galaxy. For whatever reason, they've had our number my first year there, and they've had their number this year. It's crazy. I mean, the first 3 games that we played against them last year, I think we outplayed them in each and every game, and we couldn't win a game. This year, I think Galaxy has actually outplayed LAFC. Definitely the first game, and I thought the second game until they were exhausted and couldn't get out of their own half in the second half. But, yeah, I don't think LAFC wants to play the Galaxy. I really don't. I think I still think LAFC would be favored. They're playing at home. They're the better team. But, man, Galaxy just seem to show up every time for those games. It would be a crazy game to watch.
I just want to say I have the Loons moving on, but I do somewhere in my heart want to see El Trafico in that match.
I would have the Loons if not for Seish. If they hadn't run that, I would have picked them.
Oh,
there's got to be repercussions.
Oh, you mean shh?
There's got to be
Sorry,
repercussions.
that was a really bad shh. You didn't shh very well.
Just for Adrian Heath, I hope he's listening to it. I'm going to pick the Galaxy.
We have the Adrian Heath Gnome Army on our table here. Who is the wild card in this side of the bracket for you, Benny? Who's the team that maybe nobody's talking about? Maybe it's RSL, maybe it's Portland, maybe it's Dallas. I mean, Seattle, not many people are talking about. Who is it?
I think the wild card, at least for me, is Portland. I don't see them making the run that they've made over the last few years, but Portland is undoubtedly, for me, better on the road than at home. They're a team that only knows how to play off the counterattack. They like to, sit players back and then, explode with. By the way, I don't even know if Valeri's playing because he didn't play at least the last game against us over here. But
they said he's back. He is, okay.
Yeah. So Valeri's a guy that can create the counterattack. They have guys like Chara that's fantastic at the first pass and continuing his run to get in the box. They have Blanco, who, in my opinion, has been their best player the whole year. And I don't know what's going on with Fernandez, but he's a guy that can finish. And then you have Ebobisse as well, who's, I think undervalued to that team. He's a guy that can do some dirty things and also get on the back end of things to score goals. So they have a team that can do stuff, but I haven't seen them play well in 3 months, I feel like. So
they weren't good against you guys?
No, they were not good against us. They did not play well. I didn't think they were. We obviously had our own problems this year, but I didn't think they looked like the same team that they have in the past. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see if they can actually just turn it on all of a sudden and become the team that they can be, because they do have the players. But I actually see Salt Lake winning that game. Can Portland turn it on and win? Yeah, no doubt they have the talent, but that's why I think they're the biggest wild cards.
Benny, we are excited about the playoffs. Thank you for helping us with that. Now we're going to bring you down like 45 notches.
Actually, let's go back up another 40 notches, because Benny's going to be in this very studio this weekend for Matchday Central coverage in the AT&T MLS studio. So
That's
watch those pregame and postgame shows. Bring it back up now. Drop it back down.
And we're going to drop you down on this open platform. What do you think about the U.S. national team right now? Or you could just talk about USA versus Canada. If you'd like to, you can talk about Canada. We did that quite a lot. But what do you think? What's your feelings?
What's your gut say?
So for the USA-Canada game, I watched about 30 minutes of it because the first 60 I was watching Brave with my kids before their bedtime. So I only watched the last 30 minutes. It was 1-0 when I started watching. It was bad. I mean, everybody knows it was bad. It's not like some secret. The team didn't play well. They didn't look like they had many ideas. Canada was already winning 1-0, so they were sitting back a little bit. But it seemed like a game that Canada was going to get the second, which they eventually did. And so I just think that, and this is my opinion, and literally it doesn't mean much other than it's my opinion. I think that Gregg's a great coach. I don't think that the national team is a place where you can really, work on a difficult tactical approach because you don't have the players for enough time. That's the one thing that I've said, and I've said this on the podcast as well, that it's just very difficult to play like a Columbus Crew or like a Man City. There's similarities to, I think, how Man City tries to play with the outside backs coming in and offering, help in possession and the build-up as almost like a defensive midfielder. So I think that there's things about the way that Gregg wants to play that are difficult, and it's time consuming, and it's not something that is easy to get right with small stints with your players. And so, I always talk about how Bob is a coach at LAFC that is very detail-oriented, which almost took me by surprise because as much as he was detail-oriented with the national team, he was very, I don't know if it's the right word, but he was very clear-cut in what he wanted, and it was simpler things, whereas at the club level, he was very, things that aren't so simple, like what you guys saw, on the field, getting the guy oriented in the right way. That's stuff that takes time. And so I just think that you got to change a little bit the approach and make it simpler. And the other thing that I've always said is I don't think you have the players to try and play the way that Gregg's trying to play. The national team has players that are athletic, guys that when going forward are guys that like to go into space. I mean, Pulisic is a guy that is rapid on the counterattack. He's very good one-on-one when there's space. He can create things. McKennie's a guy that runs up and down the field. So I feel like building methodically out of the back with guys that play in the back that aren't necessarily the cleanest of players, it's not the right way to play. And so I just think it's trying to, change the approach and find a better way to play. And hopefully, there's some changes coming, but it's tough right now. It's tough to watch and be a fan.
Benny, so let's say Berhalter has a come to Jesus moment after this loss, and he decides that for the next camp, which is in a month, that he is going to simplify, that it is going to be a more straightforward, less complex approach to the game. What would you work on, or what would you expect him to work on first in that instance? And for the fans sitting there watching it, how would we be able to identify it?
The first thing that I would think to do is defensive shape, and basically making it difficult for any team you're playing against to beat you, to score on you, to beat you, to break you down. Those are things that, with guys behind the ball, makes it easy on everyone. You look at the World Cup, right? You look at a team like Iceland, who's a country that has, I don't even know how many people, but they were extremely organized in the World Cup. This might have been I can't even remember if it was this World Cup or two World Cups ago, but one of you guys want to help me? I think it was this time, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So they were tough to beat. They had guys behind the ball, and when you have guys behind the ball, it makes it easier to defend. You don't have to be a world-class defender to stop Lionel Messi. You need guys around him. And so, I think you have to take a little bit more of that kind of approach, where first things you do is set, where the line's going to be, how deep, the back line, how deep the front line's going to be, what kind of gaps you want in between, how tight you want everybody, what the relationship is with the outside back and the outside winger or midfielder, and all those kind of things, so people can start feeling comfortable in defending. And then once that becomes, more second nature to the players, then you can start talking about, okay, well, once we do win, we want to have the composure to play 1-2 outlet passes to be out on the counter and let our best players succeed in space. And so I think that's the first thing that I would do. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see what Gregg does, if he changes anything, or if he's going to, try and continue to work the way he has been.
November 15th in Orlando, U.S. Canada. That's coming. It's a big game for both programs. Benny will be here in the studio with us for Matchday Central this weekend as the Audi 2019 MLS Cup playoffs kick off. What is it, like? I don't know. There's 4 games, I think, on Saturday, and then 2 on Sunday. Pre-game, post-game shows, all the coverage for you. We'll wrap the whole thing up on Sunday. Benny will be right here to give you more insight on Major League Soccer. Benny, thanks for joining us, man. If you don't already follow the podcast you got this spiel down. I hear you on the show. Go ahead and give your BS the Podcast spiel before we get you out of here.
I actually have it written down on one of my notes, so I'll just say you guys can find us on. So it's called BS the Podcast. You can find us on SoundCloud, TuneIn, Apple Podcasts is the main one, Spotify, and And always, we love the questions that we get for Ike's interrogation, and the emails Benny Sal, the podcast at gmail.com, I believe. So I don't have it in front of me, but I hope
sounds
that's
pretty close.
right.
I think that sounds right. Follow him on Twitter too. Benny, we'll see you this weekend. All right, man.
All right, save me a seat, guys. Thank you.
We will. Thank you to Benny Feilhaber for helping us out here with the LAFC favorites in the Western Conference. Before we get out of here, just real quick, we would love for you to rate Extra Time as well. We had some good ones here. We had a guy call us the MLS Bodega, which I thought
that's exciting.
Perfect.
That's
get
very
in,
exciting.
Get in, get what you need.
Feels
get
like
out.
we're moving in on the Cooligans.
Always winning where you need it.
I don't know that they invented bodegas.
No,
but they're like very about bodega culture.
Sure. Also, a 5-star from a Seattleite when Wiebe is on vacation. Yikes.
Nice.
We got the 5-star though. Yeah. Oh, wow. That was Anders? He says in my ear, he says, not sure why Wiebe is in on the podcast because he could probably start his own about babies or fathers or whatever.
No one wants to talk about your stuff.
That's true.
Wiebe.
And another
Facial.
one from Benjamin says, makes loving MLS so easy, so fun, which is exactly what we are going for. So go rate us on iTunes.
From Ben
subscribe. Tell us about your friends. Do we have one mailbag question? I know that we kind of...
Well, we have 1 million, but they're mainly about
US?
USMNT.
Nah. I don't want to...
Yeah.
I'm cleansing my life of that for today. So we're going to get out of here, watch the playoffs, all the information, MLSsoccer.com or the MLS app, Matchday Central, pregame, postgame shows. We're out of here. Have a good weekend, everybody. It begins. The playoffs are here.
Talent.